Found this article, 20 Things We Should Stop Teaching Children Immediately by Sharon Watkins. I don't know this person. Obviously, it's coming from a somewhat left wing experience. It starts with as we move forward in time, some of the things we taught our kids just don't hold up anymore. What used to be basic life lessons might now be out of touch or even harmful for how kids grow up today. The article is all about the old school ideas and habits that need a refresh. We're going to talk about why they're not best fit for our children now and how sticking to them might get in the way of them doing great in today's colorful and fast paced world. Think about stuff like the old saying and the idea that only one way to be successful. We're going to dive into 20 things like these that really need to change for the better. And to be honest, there's quite a few things that she's almost right on, especially when you're talking about the most extremes that become toxic. Like toxic masculinity is not masculinity. Wanting to be a soldier, if you're fighting an enemy that needs to be fought, is great. It's traditionally masculine for a variety of reasons. Women can do that too. We'll get to that later. But let's start with the first one, the myth of one right answer. Encourage a critical thinking and problem solving over rote memorization and singular solution. Embrace curiosity and questioning. Focusing on finding a single correct answer discourages children from exploring different solutions, questioning assumptions, and thinking critically. It reduces learning to rote memorization and stifle their natural curiosity and creativity. Um right answers existing is not a myth. For us to walk on the moon, people had to do math and get the right answer to get the rocket there. If you're on a jury, you get the answer wrong, especially if it's a violent crime. You possibly let a violent thug back out on the street if they're guilty but you thought they were innocent. If they were innocent and you thought they were guilty, you just put an innocent person behind bars. So there is a right question, but you have to be willing to be wrong. So there are questions that have right answers. And as for the problem solving and everything else, if there's a problem and you fix the problem, then you got the right answer. There's plenty of issues that have multiple right answers, but there are issues that do have one right answer. If you're on a jury, is that person in front of you guilty or innocent of the crime they're accused? And or is it just to put that person in prison? There's two questions, and depending on the case, there are one right answer. Put that sucker away. Or he shouldn't be there and he should be let go. Pressure to conform. Celebrate individuality and diverse perspectives. Teach empathy and acceptance, letting children know it's okay to be different. Children can explore their interests and discover their innate talents and passions when not confined by expectations. This leads to fulfilling life and activities they enjoy and excel at. Um, Honestly, I think we're a lot better at this. I've seen bodybuild. I've played Dungeons and Dragons with bodybuilders, military people, stuff that would be considered nerd back in the day. I think we are allowed to have multiple interests that fit into stereotypes. Empathy and acceptance is fine, but it depends on what you're trying to accept. What's the consequences? What you're defending. Honestly, individuals, for religious reasons, general understanding, are allowed to have individual aspects of themselves that they're allowed to respect, uh, that they're allowed to celebrate, to be. And then there's also times when conformity is necessary. Uh, Going back to the courtroom example, you should dress, if you know what the appropriate dress is, you should dress that way. If you go to certain churches today, you are still expected to dress your Sunday best. And that form of conformity in that environment is perfectly reasonable. Well, as trying to conform to everyone's expectations all the time is not. Fear of failure. Um, Absolutely. I think this one's 100% correct, more or less. Instead of seeing mistakes as drawbacks, frame them as stepping stones to learning and growth. Foster a safe space for experimentation and taking risk. Every mistake or setback holds a valuable lesson. Failing allows children to reflect on their approach, identify areas of improvement, and develop new strategies. Absolutely. And if you want to be a mathematician, a lawyer, you're going to have to study. You're going to have to learn for math, you will fail. You will get the wrong answers. You figure that out and work with it. In other words, finding the right answers to the questions. And so sometimes you have to guess. And when it comes to a solution such as developing a new technology, a new piece of art, that kind of thing, you have to write your book, have it fail, learn what you did wrong, and then fix it. And if you do that in a class setting, you might be able to minimize those failures and get to the right what needs to happen better. That doesn't mean there's only one right answer when it comes to, say, art, but it does mean there are certain skills that can make it more likely to be successful in those fields. And if you want to change, if you want to create something new, you have to be afraid to fail. Otherwise, you're just repeating what other people have done. Uh, the next one, the zero sum game mentality. Move beyond the idea that someone's success means your loss. Empathize, collaboration, cooperation, and building each other up. Rock education stresses that play is an essential part of childhood that enables children to learn how to cooperate as adults. Um, yes, especially in an environment where you're trying to accomplish a task, whether that's a team sport against another team, or whether that is, frankly, a lot of stuff like there's a certain fight where there's certain times where people will try and stop somebody else's success or think that that other person needs to failure for them to succeed. That's just not true. That's not right. Even in capitalism, which I think this particular article is critical of, you can have multiple people competing in the same space, and you're probably going to have quite a few people who will visit multiple competing businesses to enjoy it. The importance of material possessions. Focus on intrinsic values like kindness, curiosity, resilience, instead of defining worth by what you own. Teach about responsible consumption and mindful living as children are at the heart of sustainability. First of all, this is a paragraph that has some, I kind of agree with it, that it's not about necessarily all the stuff you have. Sometimes you're not going to be able to have what somebody else has. Um, Talks about jealousy in biblical teaching. And so those things are more important than worth. as for kindness, resilience, or curiosity and resilience, you might not get those things, but like the classic prayer says, uh, having the strength to change the things that I can, the resilience to accept the things that I can't, and the knowledge to know the difference is a important thing to teach kids. But as for mindful, responsible consumption, um, not going to agree with the buzzword without how this person defines those terms. Gender stereotypes and rigid roles. Break free from limited expectations of let children explore their interests and talents freely, regardless of traditional gender norms. Breaking free from limited expectations allow children to freely explore interests and talents, regardless of traditional gender roles. This empowers them to discover their full potential, pursue their dreams without societal constraints. There are definitely conservatives out there that will. One stupid thing a person said is women couldn't wield swords. There have been women warriors with fairly decent careers throughout all of history. Generally fewer than men, but they existed. And I think in many ways, what defines what a woman has changed severely, or I should say femininity. In many ways, I think it is easier for a woman, female, whatever, to be a tomboy than a man to be something else. You ever notice that very rarely are there damsels that are men? That's largely because the woman freeing herself, okay, that's great. She has her own power fantasy. And if you have the writing skills to back that up, she can be more than just a power fantasy. With a man, he can free himself, he can free his girl, but if the girl needs to free the man, that often can make him look less than, look like he may not be worthy of that woman because he needs her to save him. Where the woman, it doesn't necessarily mean she's less than because she's not able to protect her spouse. Unrealistic beauty standards promote body positivity and self acceptance, encourage healthy habits, and celebrate all the body types and appearances. That can be contradictory. Healthy habits, all body types and appearances, knowing that healthy is not necessarily, 115-pound woman, 150-pound man, unless he's built like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But that's where you do get some issues because there's many people saying healthy at almost any size, and you find that's not true. And sometimes, even when there's genetic reasons for it, those genetics still need to lead to problem issues. Now, the title of it, Unrealistic Beauty Standards, is appropriate. And I do think over the years we have broadened our definition of attractiveness a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. Almost a third of 16 to 24-year-olds feel their body and face aren't attractive compared to what they see online. Um, Models are pretty. Models, by definition, are supposed to be an unrealistic beauty standard. Unless you're trying to be a model, especially if you don't look like a model, you should not think your partner conforms to that. Agree with it more or less, but that doesn't mean that you can't have, you know, those statues, those people that are the fantasy, not the reality, as long as you have a realistic understanding of not settling for somebody that doesn't fit that, but that there's so much to a person, and an eight still an eight. Yeah, this one's easy. Lure of violence is conflict resolution. Sometimes you need cops, sometimes you need people, sometimes cops ain't going to get there in time, and you may need to protect yourself if somebody's trying to hurt you. But if you threw the first punch, you're probably wrong. The next one, fear of other cultures and people. Fear often breeds misunderstanding and prejudice. When children grow up fearing other cultures and people, they're more likely to develop biased and discriminatory attitudes. Teaching them to embrace differences, engage in respectful dialogue, and understanding diverse perspectives and dismantle these negative biases and fosters acceptance and inclusivity. Um, yes, you should not be paranoid of other people and other cultures. You should not be paranoid from people that, in some cases, may be your neighbors because they fled a culture that should be judged, because they do things that are unacceptable. That doesn't mean fancy costumes. That doesn't mean uh certain things being acceptable, like women going topless on some beaches in Europe would be more accepted than here. I'm talking about uh killing women, body mu- certain actions to their bodies. That's just women. Um Killing people that don't conform to the religious or non-religious tyrants of a particular country. All of those are things we can discuss. So, actually knowing before you judge a culture, or know what you're talking about, before you judge somebody from those cultures, know why they're probably in your immediate, why they're your neighbor before you assume things about them. That one's kind of easy. And here's another one that I think is just downright wrong in many cases: the illusion of meritocracy. Meritocracy often reveals itself as an illusion. Prepare perpetuatory inequalities and failing to account for systemic advantages and disadvantages, systemic inequalities and privileges. Nurture compassion and a sense of responsibility for creating a more equitable world. In other words, I don't work for something or assume somebody didn't earn it. This literally is one of those things where this woman writing for Fine Tune Finances, um she got there because they read a bunch of articles and they decided hers was the best. Does she think she doesn't deserve to have this form? Or is she going, it really is kind of silly. Yes, people start off at different places. And if a person inherits their family business and makes it better, then they had merit. If it collapses under their watch, they may not have been able to adapt in certain ways. But also, it doesn't really have a solution other than a more equitable world. What does that mean? Does that mean if you only have so much money and you have 10 applicants, you're not looking at what they're able to accomplish, what they have in their past that puts in there? Recognizing merit, you can often see that if they're starting at a lower place, but excelled to get to where they are, even if you have people that's resume is better by pure numbers, then yeah, you should look at that. You should teach them to look for merit when they need to make a decision on the best person qualified for a job. And maybe they take a risk based off of stuff that they see in interview or other aspects. But the idea that meritocracy is an illusion is not correct. The person that breaks the world record at the Olympics broke the world record. That's merit. You get to the Olympics by proving you're better than other people at the sport that you're trying to show. So there is merit out there. And when you have something, you should be looking at meritocracy. Uh, if you're a lawyer, if you're a law firm, and you only have so many positions, you go with the person you think's going to not just be the best on paper, but the best fit. And I think that's also merit in and of itself. It's not just their grades in their class, but trying to gauge the entirety of the person to see if, even if they didn't have the best start, what will they do with the resources you give them to improve, to accomplish your goals and theirs. Pressure to be always Pressure to always be happy. Suppressing or ignoring emotions hinders emotional intelligence. By embracing all feelings, children learn to identify and understand their emotions, leading to better self-awareness and regulation. Um, Nothing to say yes. The next one, importance of competition, is the zero-sum game that they mentioned earlier. And it actually, there's a better term in this very section, the importance of competition, as being the 20 things we should stop teaching children immediately, teaching them the importance of competition. And then it starts off with undermining the very statement that it starts with. While healthy competition can have its place, prioritizing collaboration and building each other up, I don't think that's the same thing. The healthy competition is the importance of competition. Understanding that there may be only certain people can get, say, a scholarship. So you have to be willing to compete. You have to be willing to defeat the other person because you may have to show, dare I say it, merit in order to have a chance to overcome your lack of resources to accomplish your goals. You will likely have to put you may have to defeat somebody else to accomplish your goals. But let's get to the second part of it, emphasizing learning and personal growth over winning at all costs. That right there should have been the top one. 20 things we should stop teaching children immediately. Winning at all costs. That's the bad problem. The importance of competition is putting it in perspective of other positive traits. We should stop teaching kids competition is always essential, and instead focus on an effort and personal growth over winning at all costs. Sometimes the best way to achieve personal growth is frankly to compare it to somebody else in the same field, especially somebody that you're within striking distance of, or seeing that person as a goal. Being able to, if you're an MMA fighter, to one day get a chance to fight that person. And then teach children to set goals, track their progress, and celebrate their achievements regardless of the outcome. Um, Again, this is a reiteration of the failure part where you learn from your failures so you can succeed later. And celebrating their achievements is winning within the confines of the rules that they are and ethics of what they're trying to achieve. So I think winning at all costs would have been better than the importance of competition because you don't necessarily need to be the best of the best if you don't want to be, but if you want to own your own restaurant, if that's your dream, then you're going to have to compete to get the resources to do that. The need to always be busy, nothing to add. The myth of multitasking. Promote focused attention and quality over quantity. Help children develop skills like time management and prioritizing to excel in one task at a time. Absolutely. Holding a baby and making a phone call, you can do both those things. Hold a baby, making a phone call, cooking dinner, that's when something goes wrong. So you need to prioritize your tasks, and that's how you get them done. Not doing a quarter, not doing a quarter of attention on each of them. You get one done, then move to the next. So yeah, pursuit of perfection. Embrace the idea that good enough is okay. Foster self-compassion, acceptance of imperfections, encouraging learning and progress over self-criticism. Um, Health self-criticism is okay. The pursuit of perfection is not necessarily the problem. If you can see the world record as an achievable goal, then you keep pushing yourself. You can make it, but understanding that only one other person in the world has ever done has ever hit that point, or at least recorded, you have to understand you might not get there. But if you look for it's the people that can look at every little thing that's willing to get there. So the pursuit of perfection is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when you're a lot closer to it than a lot of other people. But assuming you have to be perfect at everything and not accepting that you can and will fail at some point, that's where it can get unnerving. Having a healthy pursuit of being the best you can be, especially if you are somebody that can break a world record, then yeah, you're going to have to look at every minute detail of how you do whatever you're going to break the world record in to get there because you practically have to be perfect to beat it. So you should definitely, this is another one of those where you have to have a healthy pursuit of being the best you can be. Fear of public speaking, help children develop communication skills, confidence in expressing themselves, create safe spaces, and practice and provide constructive feedback. Absolutely, because earlier what this article said about uh competition, it's when you are trying to accomplish something, it's not just being sometimes good at that thing. You also have to convince people that you can achieve your goal and why that benefits them. What's in it for them? Why are they risking feeding their children to help you out? You got to communicate what you're trying to do, how you're doing it to get the help that you need. That you should be there, that you are the person to do the job, and sometimes communicating why you're the person to do the job can be better than being the person that's actually better at the job. Pair of stereotypes. Challenge Implicit biases promote critical thinking about generalizations based on race, ethnicity, religion, or any other group affiliation. Great. That also goes if you're throwing pejoratives about a group that's seen as privileged. Importance of always knowing the answer. Well, desire to know the answer is everything and is understandable, especially in children. Constantly striving for ultimate knowledge can have both positive and negative consequences. Embrace the unknown and encourage curiosity. Teach how to research, ask questions, and learn from diverse perspectives. Absolutely. I don't know the answer. Let me find out is a can be the right answer. Glorification of wealth and fame. Emphasize intrinsic values like kindness, integrity, and over existential measures of success. Discuss social responsibility and using resources to make positive impact. Last part is one of those things where I'd have to question it, but overall, another one that yes, if you want to make board games, you probably are not going to be rich and famous. Doing whatever you can for wealth and fame will likely make you a bad person. Being a good actor that achieves it because you can be in movies that people like doesn't if wealth and fame is because you're a good artist, a good musician and you get to make music and your bills are paid, you should be happy with that. And if you become a millionaire doing that, good for you. But the pursuit of wealth and fame at all costs will have a negative impact, especially if it's doing something that doesn't really make you happy or you're good at it. The fear of making mistakes. A lot of this is repetitive. We already been the fear of failure. That was the beginning. And that is it.